It's been a while. I know all 54 of you have been waiting with bated breath for, when's the bald guy going to do something new? Unfortunately, well, actually, fortunately, it's been a very busy year, which I guess is good for me overall, but I kept delaying the videos, saying to myself, well, I'll get back to this, and eventually I'll do it. Here we are. It's almost 2025. And I probably look older. It's been, as I said, it's been a busy year, very stressful year, but ultimately, I guess that's a good thing. So I've had a lot of time to think about things to talk about. And what I usually do is I make a list of all these items that, are interesting at the time and try to think about what do I want to say. And I usually just start with the easiest and the one that's on my mind. So what we're going to talk about is collection calls. What do you do? So collection calls, not fun. Not fun at all. Nobody enjoys them, and it's quite common for people when they're sitting in front of me for the first time. They're probably behind on their bills at this point. Some people aren't, but a lot of people are. That's kind of what encouraged them to come see a guy like me. Their debt has gotten to the point where they can't even keep up with the monthly payments, and when you miss payments, you get phone calls. And, people want to know what should they do and, how does this work and what can be done to me and am I in any danger? Am I, as I've mentioned in other videos, am I going to jail? And no, you're not going to jail. But what ultimately happens is by the time I get to the end of our first meeting, usually I've been able to make a recommendation and they're going to have to do some kind of insolvency proceeding, most often a proposal, occasionally a bankruptcy, but in most cases a proposal. And I'll inform them throughout the meeting. I'll say, look, once you file your proposal or your bankruptcy, you are protected. You get what's known as a legal stay of proceedings. A legal stay of proceedings is a fancy way of saying court protection. You are protected by the law. Okay, and it's real. It's not you're protected. No, you are protected. The creditors have to cease collection efforts. Now, in a subsequent video, I'll explain how some creditors don't always play ball, but the creditors have to leave you alone. And in the case of a proposal, for at least 45 days, the creditors have to leave you alone as they vote. And of course, if your proposal passes, the protection, the stay of proceedings stays in place for as long as your proposal is in good standing. And once you pay everything off, you're good. They have to leave you alone then too. If it's a bankruptcy, boom, you're protected, and it just stays that way as long as you fulfill the duties of your bankruptcy. So the best thing someone can do if they're struggling and receiving calls on a regular basis, and these are calls can be quite threatening at times. The best thing they can do is move quickly. I'll tell people, look, you want to be organized. And if you're not organized, I need you to get organized, because in order to file a proposal or a bankruptcy, in order to get things set up so they can file with a trustee, there are certain documents we need: ID, pay stubs, taxes, car insurance, car ownership, the lease and stuff like that. So I'll tell them, look, you got to get to work here, and the sooner you can get this done, the sooner I can get things organized for you, and I can make sure that everything's in order and we can do what I said we can do, and I can try to get you the best deal possible, and et cetera, but I need the documentation. So if you delay, well, you're going to have to put up with phone calls much longer. Now, what about the people who aren't receiving calls? Well, very often, and I know this is going to come up, so I'll just bring it up anyways, I'll tell someone, look, if you're prepared to move forward with what we discussed, my recommendation is that you stop paying the creditors. Now, when I say that, there's a caveat. Obviously, you have to keep paying your rent. You have to keep paying your phone bill. You have to keep paying your internet bill. If you have a car loan or lease and you're planning on keeping that car, well, you're going to have to keep paying it. Otherwise, big guys will show up and take it from you. And they'll look at me a little funny and they'll say, you want me to stop paying the credit card and line of credit? And I'll say, well, yeah. And I'll say, look, I can't force you to do it. And it's not that you must do it or this won't work, but you're giving these guys a lot of money every month. If you owe $50,000, you're probably paying close to $1,000 a month, give or take. I think you need that money more than the bank does. Now that's not, we're not trying to slap the banks around. We're not trying to get them good, but don't throw good money after bad. If you're playing poker, and it's your turn to bet, you don't bet and then say, oh, I fold anyways. No, you just fold. Okay, why would you put more money into the pot just to say, yeah, I give up anyways? Well, no, just fold. So I'll say to people, my recommendation is that you stop paying the creditors right now. And done properly, I mean, this will result in two things. Number one is you'll have more money in your pocket and you can actually afford to buy things without having to use credit for the first time in a long time. The second thing is it'll trigger phone calls and letters and text messages and emails and so forth. And they're not fun. But I'll tell people there's three ways to deal with the calls. Well, even before we get to the ways to deal with the calls, the first thing people need to know is the creditors at this point cannot hurt you. Okay? You're not going to jail. Chances of someone showing up at your door are slim to none unless you're dealing with sharks, and that's another video. Okay, but if we're dealing with banks and typical lenders, even some of the higher interest guys, the payday loan guys, they're not coming to your door. Okay, there's two guys I can think of that do this, and I'll talk about them in the next video. But first thing is understand they can't hurt you. All they can do is annoy the living shit out of you. Okay, which, look, if you're like most of my clients and you suffer from a condition known as decency, and you probably do, I do too, I have the same affliction, it's not fun to have someone nagging you 15 times a day, where's my money, where's my money? And look, they call a lot. Every creditor has their own character, their own personality profile. But for the most part, I mean, they may even robocall you. You know, you'll just get these calls over and over and over again. And of course, if you don't answer, they're going to keep calling. But you need to know, unless you've signed something called a wage assignment, which even if you did, I rarely see them enforced. Unless it's CRA, it takes a long time for these guys to do anything to you. They'll threaten you with garnishments and all this stuff. Guys, it takes a long time to get a garnishment unless you've signed a wage assignment. A wage assignment, by the way, very quickly, is just something that says, yeah, you can garnish, you can go straight to my HR department, my payroll department, and garnish my salary without having to go to court. Most of the time, all the time, if somebody wants to garnish you and their name is not Canada Revenue Agency, they're going to have to take you to court. Okay, which means they're going to have to serve you with papers. You have 20 days to respond. Then they have to get a court date. Then they have to go to court. Then they have to win. They have to get the judgment. Then they have to go to your payroll department. It takes time, guys. By the time that happens, unless you're just completely incapable of getting your act together, we've already filed and you're protected. So, how do you handle calls? Well, there's three things you can do, but really there's one thing you can do, and that is you ignore them. Okay? If you're organized and if you're diligent and you're serious about dealing with your debt and going through an insolvency process like a proposal or a bankruptcy in the worst case, and you can get organized, pardon me, then you just ignore the calls for 1 to 2 weeks. Okay? Now, if you're a little slower, okay, you can also, people say, well, should I answer the phone? I say, look, you can answer the phone and talk to them, and maybe you can stall them. Look, I'm looking for a second job. I'm sorry. Can you give me a couple of weeks? It might work. At best, you might buy yourself a week or two, of oxygen. But the problem is you have to remember the collectors have been trained that anything you say other than I will pay is just noise. That's all it is. It's noise. And they're going to ignore it. And if you lack the verbal dexterity to really deal with this, as most of my clients do because English is not their first language, or just, not everyone has the gift of gab, it's going to be a struggle. Okay, so I tell people you may as well ignore it and let them leave messages. Yeah, it'll be threatening messages. This is an urgent matter. We're going to get legal involved. Guys, it's just some 27-year-old twit wearing a headset, okay? It's not Big Omar who's coming to get you, okay? Anyways, so you can ignore them. Best thing to do. You can speak with them. The third thing some people are encouraged to do is speak to them in a foreign language. Yeah, that would probably work if you weren't in the GTA. Okay, true story. I had a client who was fluent in Pashtun. He tried that. Not only did they have a guy from Afghanistan on site at the collection agency, apparently, according to my client, he was from the same village. So he had the same accent, same everything. Guys, it's the GTA. Whatever you speak, I guarantee the collectors have someone who speaks your language. So doesn't really work. Okay, so the best thing you can do is move your ass and ignore the calls. Now, when you file and the stay of proceedings kicks in, you should know that even though the creditors are supposed to stop calling you, it takes them a few days to figure out what's going on. Okay, the file is usually registered with the OSB right away, but the creditors don't know you filed a proposal right away. They have to get what's known as your creditor package. Well, that can take several days. I often tell my clients, I say, look, actually often, always, I tell them, look, give them about 15 days to shut up, okay? If they don't shut up by then, let me know, we'll try to, bat at them and so forth. As a general rule, the higher the interest rate, the slower the creditor. Guys like Money Mart and Cash Money are just brutal. Horribly disorganized. I don't care if they see this. I mean, they know. They've admitted it to me. Horribly disorganized, and the branch doesn't talk to head office, and head office doesn't talk to the branch. And frankly, a lot of these guys, just in general, they're trying to get one more bite at the apple. They're trying to see if they can still intimidate you. I've even, heard stories. They'll call my client and say, "Yeah, oh yeah, no, your proposal didn't go through, or no, we voted against it. You got to pay us." No, stay of proceedings is in place. You're safe. So I always tell clients, if they're still calling you after a while, let us know. Okay, give us the phone number, because they call from a million different numbers, and this way we can figure out what's what. And we'll try to double team with the trustee. I'll even encourage them. Here's what you say to them. Here's the creditor package. Send it to them, etc., etc. So very important when dealing with calls. Best thing you can do: move. Okay, get stuff done. Don't sit around and take your time, because the longer you wait, the longer they're just going to keep calling you. And eventually they will move things to a collector, and collectors aren't beholden to the same rules as the banks. The banks have to follow certain rules. The collectors have more leeway, and they get away with more. And eventually they can sue you. Okay, and that doesn't make sense to waste that much time. So move your ass, but also understand that once you file, the stay of proceedings is in place and you're safe. Okay, remember, it's not the cops. You haven't murdered anyone, hopefully, and get on with your life. Thank you very much. More to come. Nice seeing you again, by the way.